Let's start with one of the creepiest historical connections between two of the most significant U.S. presidents, Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. These two men, separated by a century, share eerie and inexplicable parallels in their lives and deaths. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846, and Kennedy exactly 100 years later, in 1946. Both were elected as president 100 years apart, Lincoln in 1860 and Kennedy in 1960. In a twist of fate, Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater, while Kennedy was assassinated in a car made by the Ford Motor Company. Both presidents were shot on a Friday, and both were succeeded by vice presidents named Johnson, Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson. Even the men who assassinated them have strange connections. John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, the men who killed Lincoln and Kennedy, were both born in 1839 and 1939 respectively. Could these connections be mere coincidence, or is something more mysterious at play? Now let's talk about the Titanic, one of history's most infamous tragedies. But did you know that the sinking of the Titanic was eerily predicted by a fictional story? 14 years before the Titanic sank, a writer named Morgan Robertson published a novel called Futility, which described an unsinkable ship called the Titan. The Titan, like the Titanic, struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic and lacked enough lifeboats for all passengers. The similarities didn't end there. Robertson's ship was almost identical in size to the Titanic, and both ships were seen as unsinkable. The Titanic sank in 1912, and when it did, people couldn't ignore the unsettling similarities between the two. Was this simply a coincidence, or did Robertson somehow foresee the future? The mysteries continue with Edgar Allan Poe, whose works often blurred the line between reality and the supernatural. In 1838, Poe wrote a tale called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, in which a shipwrecked crew resorts to cannibalism in order to survive, killing a cabin boy named Richard Parker. Fast forward decades to 1884, when a real-life ship, the Mignonette, was wrecked. The crew did indeed resort to cannibalism, and the cabin boy they killed. His name was Richard Parker. How could Poe, years before this event, have chosen the exact name of the cabin boy? Speaking of cosmic coincidences, let's look at Mark Twain and his uncanny connection to Halley's Comet. Twain, born in 1835, was born the same year Halley's Comet passed by the Earth. What's even stranger is that Twain predicted he would die with the comet's return. And sure enough, Twain passed away on April 21, 1910, just one day after the comet's closest approach. Was this an astonishing coincidence, or was there a deeper, more mysterious connection between Twain and the comet? Next, let's talk about the Hoover Dam, one of the most iconic American landmarks, and an eerie connection between father and son. The first person to die during the dam's construction was a worker named J.G. Tierney, who drowned in 1922. But what makes this story so eerie is that 13 years later, in 1935, on the same exact day, J.G. Tierney's son, Patrick Tierney, also died while working on the Hoover Dam project. How could this father and son duo both die on the same day during the construction of this massive project? Could it be just a coincidence, or was something beyond their control at play? The survival story of Violet Jessup is another mysterious tale that ties back to the Titanic. Violet survived 3 separate sinking disasters. She was aboard the RMS Olympic when it collided with a warship in 1911, then survived the Titanic sinking in 1912 and again survived the sinking of the HMHS Britannic in 1916. All 3 of these ships were sister ships, and each disaster seemed to follow Violet wherever she went. What are the chances of one person surviving 3 major shipwrecks, all related to the same fleet of ships? Was Violet just incredibly lucky, or was she cursed to be a part of these disasters? In another eerie historical event, let's talk about Archduke Franz Ferdinand, whose assassination in 1914 sparked World War I. The license plate of the car he was traveling in on the day of his assassination was A3118. Years later, people noticed something strange. The numbers on the license plate appeared to predict the end of World War I. The armistice that ended the war was signed on November 11, 1918. Exactly 11/11/18. Was this just a coincidence, or was there something eerily symbolic about the numbers on the license plate? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales that challenge the boundaries of reality. And don't forget to check out my latest video, where we dive even deeper into the most chilling and inexplicable occurrences in history.